Welcome back. This is Randy Pryor, UNL Extension Educator in Saline County. This is for the Nebraska 4-H Corn Challenge Sustainability Award participants. We have lesson number 3. We're going to be able to complete that management section of the Fieldprint Calculator. That's probably the one that challenges people the most. We're going to make it simple for you to do that. And after that management section, it's really downhill from there. And you can be proud of your accomplishments in getting your first Fieldprint tool. If you think about it, there's 12 challenge contest participants in the state. Not all are going to take the time to learn how to do their first field prints. So you really have a good chance of winning this award just by completion of your first field print for your challenge plot. I'm going to go right into some tips, some useful references. One of the questions in the management section is how to estimate your residue cover, which decreases field runoff. That's really an important concept. If you have at least 30% residue at planting time, reduce field runoff and sediment going off your field by 60%. That has water quality implications too. So you can estimate that real easily using the line transect method. There's actually a UNL NEB guide G1931 on how to do that. You can also use pictures. I like to do agronomy guide AY269W. There's some excellent pictures for your reference. There's another question concerning nitrogen and phosphorus application on your challenge plot field. Did you follow the University of Nebraska guidelines? And so that's a good question. To check, go to UNL Guide EC117. Use your favorite web browser and search for that. And there's a table in there that you can calculate that. And it does make a difference with how much organic matter is in your soil. And also if you used any manure or if there's nitrates in your irrigation water and that sort of thing. And also if you're following soybeans. So take a look at those recommendations and see where you stack up. As far as water quality off our farm fields, there's a really good new publication out, Midwest RP 189. You can take a look at that also. In Nebraska, environmental wise, there's a lot of talk about water quality and water quantity. Water quality wise, with our groundwater, we certainly don't want to have too much nitrates in our water. The health standard is 10 parts per million. So when we fertilize our corn crop, you want to just use enough, and any extra that would get past the root zone could actually leak down to our aquifer. The dead zone is something that we talk about in the Gulf of Mexico. If we have too much sediment or too much nitrogen and phosphorus that comes off of our farm fields and field runoff, if you look at our tributary and river systems in the Midwest, everything does end up at the basin of the Mississippi. And what that does is causes algae blooms. And when you have that, it takes the oxygen out of the ocean water. That's really devastating to fisheries in that neck of the woods. And so we need to think about that with our conservation practices and try to keep as much sediment, as much nutrient, nitrogen and phosphorus on our farm fields as possible. NRCS is our Natural Resources and Conservation Service in our county where we live and work. They have management zones that are used in the Fieldprint Calculator. So there's a different list that we have to choose from. And so with those lists, they may be different depending on which zone you're in. And they're modified and fine-tuned to the field where you're located. So with that, it's time to go to the Fieldprint tool And we'll go to www.fieldtomarket.org and click on the Fieldprint Calculator and go to the login screen. You've already learned how to do that, and you go ahead and log in. Mine was saved automatically by my browser. So my field was previously saved, and it was called the 4-H Challenge Field Wilbur. I'm going to load that field. I'm going to come back. I'm going to go down. We've already finished location, soil, and crop rotation. Now we're going to go to that management section. Really, you need to have 2015 highlighted here. I had mentioned in a previous lesson you could start with 2014 and then you transfer it over. That's a lot of work. Just wait till the field to market teams put 2015 corn in there. I'm going to just show you how to use it using the 14. You'll be using the 2015. Under tillage system. Are you conventional tillage on your challenge plot field? Are you no-tilling or ridge-tilling or using the strip-till system? If you're using the ridge-till system, under management, it's easy. You have field corn for grain, ridge-till, zone 24, which is automatically the zone that I'm in. And that's easy. You're done. Now, maybe you didn't plant exactly on April 15th. Or maybe you didn't ditch the field on May 15th and June 15th, went twice. That's okay. Just have one choice. That's what you click on. What if you no-till planted the field? What are those choices? Well, there's two of them that are exactly the same. That's a mistake. Doesn't matter which one you use. If you just no-till planted it and used liquid fertilizer or urea, dry fertilizer, you would click on one of those. Down here, it has NR. That stands for narrow rows. Don't use that unless you're planting 15-inch or 20-inch corn rows. In my field, we used anhydrous this spring and into soybean stubble, and then it was no-till planted. So I would click on that one. Even though the fertilizer was not on April 10th and the planter was not exactly April 25th, that's okay. That's what we use. Where it gets a little bit more confusing is when you do tillage. I'll explain why. Under conventional tillage, look at all your choices. Now, if you think about it, unless you're on 15 or 20-inch rows, all these down here, you can eliminate those. You have the help message here to help with what the codes mean. But basically, anything with an S means operations in the spring. Anything with an F here would be fall operations. So this would be conventional tillage in the fall with a chisel plow that had a straight point chisel, was anhydrous. It was disked and then field cultivated in the spring. FP means moldboard plowing, so not a lot of that anymore. So pretty much straightforward. Here's fall management, disked in the fall, field cultivated in the spring. Well, what if on soybean residue, irrigated soybean residue, you left it over winter and you just hit it with the mulch finisher or a field cultivator in the spring? If it was a one-pass system, I would use no-till and use that no-till system. If it was a two-pass system, though, you need to use one of these that's the closest to what describes your situation. So our field was no-till, was anhydrous. I'll click that one, and we'll move forward. There was no residue removed last fall on the bean ground. If you had corn stubble and you had a corn-on-corn plot and you removed corn residue for the feed yard or for fodder, you would have to click yes. This field was soybean stubble. We left all the residue. I'll click no. Was there any nitrogen credit taken? for our subsequent corn crop from a cover crop. There was no cover crop planted in this soybean field, and this does not pertain to legume credit. It just pertains to if you had planted cover crops. So I'm going to leave that at 0. Under vegetative cover, is there less than 30% residue? This is residue cover on the soil surface and the growing material. Or is it 31 to 80 or really high, above 80%? Well, it goes back to the reference that I was talking about. Those pictures can help you. This one, in my example, is an irrigated soybean residue that's going to be planted to corn this spring. So in January, field was untouched. We had 31 to 80% residue in the field in January, and also February, and also March. But right the first part of April, that first day in April, we went through with an anhydrous machine. And that removed and covered up some residue. And so we're no longer 30%, 31% to 80, or less than 30%. And after planting time, the first part of May, that covered a little more residue up, and we're less than 30%. Then the beans started growing. We're back to medium and green to the eye by the 4th of July, full canopy. We're high residue the rest of the way out, and no fall tillage, and no bales were taken off this cornfield. And so there you go. That's how I'd answer it for my field. The next question, integrated pest management. That's a big word. You can learn about it by using the question mark here and reading about integrated pest management. But basically, if you use multiple strategies and you practice crop rotation schemes and you only spray once you reach a certain threshold, you're using IPM strategies, including chemical controls. If you are mixing an insecticide in with Roundup, regardless of how many insects are in the field, you would click on number 4. So you can read about those other 2 options there. If it's organic, you would mainly be using that first section. This field is going to be number 2. The next question is nutrient application rate. Was our nitrogen and phosphorus applications right at the University of Nebraska Extension recommendations? Or are we over or under those recommendations? Well, this goes back to that NEB guide and EC that I talked about at the beginning. Go ahead and calculate where you're at. Work with your 4-H leader or your parents or your FFA instructor to help with that if you have any questions, or you can give me an email or a phone call on it if you have any questions on that. The next question is soil condition at the primary nitrogen application. The 1st of April, our soil was moist when the anhydrous went on, so I'll have to click moist. Not too often in eastern Nebraska are we dry down to 8 inches, or the top part of our profile is very dry. If it was, you would click on that, or if the ground was frozen at the time that you applied liquid or dry fertilizer. The dominant application method in this case was anhydrous ammonia. There's other methods that are there. If you injected liquid, or if you surface banded liquid or dry, or if you broadcast incorporated, or if you simply broadcasted without incorporation by ground rig, airplane, or with fertigation. That, once again, the dominant application method where most of your N was applied for the corn crop. Application type, in this case, was single. If there's multiple applications of nitrogen and you're doing split applications, you can hit split there. In this case, there is one single dominant application with anhydrous ammonia. Next question is fertilizer and crop protection trips. This would be where we applied nitrogen and or other products. Let me show you what happens if I put 10 trips across the field. Well, you would have 10 areas where you would have either put on fertilizer or you put on an herbicide, an insecticide, a fungicide, a growth regulator, or harvest aid, or a soil fumigant. Soil fumigants are mainly used in the vegetable industry and not so much here in Nebraska. And see, you have a placeholder then to put information for all 10 trips. For brevity, I'm going to show you an example with 4 trips across the field. Trip number 1 was anhydrous. And it was 1 trip across the field the first couple days in April. The rate analysis of the product I used was 8200, or in this case, anhydrous ammonia. The amount of product that I put on is not the actual nitrogen, it's the amount of bulk product. And I put on 200 pounds of bulk product of anhydrous ammonia. No other product was placed on the field at that time, so I'm done with trip 1. The next trip was a pre-plant application with the herbicide, and I used 2 products. One of the products' name was called Bicep, and another one was 2,4-D. That's actually 3 active ingredients because Bicep has 2 active ingredients in there. This goes off of the number of active ingredients. Now notice this says fertilizer. In this case, I put on 0 fertilizer, but I put on 3 herbicides or 3 active ingredients. No other products were applied. Done with my sprayer application. Trip number 3 was at planting. And at planting, I actually put on starter fertilizer. So I'll click on 1 and I put on 1034 liquid in furrow with the seed. Was it slow release? No. Slow release products would have agrotane, polycoated urea. If you put on Inserve with the anhydrous, that would be any additive or any product that would make that fertilizer slow release. Have any questions on that? You can follow up. But this is not really used at this time. It's a placeholder. It's a placeholder question and possibly would be used in the future with more explanation. So the product amount that I used was 5 gallons of 1034O with the planter. No other insecticides or fungicides were placed in furrow. Trip number 4 was a trip where we did post-planting for weed control. No fertilizer was applied. It was 2 different active ingredients of herbicide. And that was my last trip. You may have additional trips, and so that's how you fine-tune it for your corn challenge plot. Notice if manure was applied to the field, we would need to click 1 or more times if that was applied. You have timing, type, source, method, and the amount of manure and how it came out of storage. You would all answer those questions. Each one has a pick list for you to choose from. The most important point here is how much nitrogen you applied. This is not the bulk amount of organic nitrogen that comes from the manure test. You might have bulk applied 100 pounds, but maybe only 30 or 40 was available to the crop. Typically, only 25 to no more than 40% of the total nitrogen is available for your crop. So this is asking for nitrogen that was available to the crop for your 2015 year. My field did not have any manure applied, so I'm going to put 0, and then I'm going to put save. So I am done with the management section. I hope you are soon done with your management section. The only thing left is product transportation, drying, planted not harvested, and conservation practices. We'll tackle that in lesson number 4. Thanks for listening.